Hello, everybody, everywhere, wherever you are. And I hope you're having a good day. We're having a reasonably good day, aren't we, Spike?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm John Atack. This is Spike Robinson. And as Spike pointed out before we got into this, uh, come next March, we'll have been working together for 10 years. And she still manages to smile. It's difficult. So, yeah, our topic for today is Scientology modern day magic, or is Scientology a rebranding of traditional magic ideas? And if you want to just skip off the video quickly, the answer is yes, but you might want to have a little more detail. I'm working on a book at the moment. In fact, I'm working on several books at the moment. And two of those books will have something about the relationship between Scientology and Aleister Crowley's Ordo Templi Orientis and Madame Blavatsky's Theosophy. And I've done a lot of work on this. It's a ridiculous amount of work. So at the centre of Aleister Crowley's teaching is the belief that we can control our own destiny. He says, postulate. Any required change may be effected by the application of the proper kind and degree of force in the proper manner through the proper medium to the proper object. That's his definition of a postulate, a word that Hubbard would borrow from him. Further, he says, every intentional act is a magical act. And finally, every failure proves that one or more requirements of the postulate have not been fulfilled. This is not Hubbard, this is Aleister Crowley. Every intentional act is a magical act. Now, Crowleyite magic is based on the idea of the use of the will, or thelema, depending how you want to pronounce it. And the Crowley borrowed the French author Rabelais' statement. It's above the monastery in, I can't remember which book it's in, Pantagruel, or one of those endlessly waffly things that the stoner Rabelais wrote. And do what thou wilt
Shall be the whole of the law.
is the law. The whole of the law.
Yeah.
Love under law. Sorry. Do what
Love
thou
under
wilt
will.
should be that. Love
Whole of the
under will.
law.
That's the
Love
terrible one.
under will.
The central idea of Crowley is the will. You're exalting the will. Your will make things happen. Now, this has some origins. Let's go 1934, the Nuremberg Rally, the movie Leni Riefenstahl made, one of the most brilliant documentaries ever made, sadly about a deeply unpleasant subject, but it is a phenomenal piece of filmmaking. The triumph of the will. This probably is coming from Nietzsche, and he took it from the philosopher Schopenhauer. And this is this idea that we have this force within ourselves. Now, this isn't what Schopenhauer said, and it isn't what Nietzsche said, but it's what the Nazis come to believe, that you force events to occur in the world because of your mind over matter. And it strikes me that, I'm sorry?
I was just thinking if that was so, then I don't know. It seems to me patently false that you can actually affect the world just by thinking about it.
By
Because,
willpower.
yeah, just by your willpower.
Mm.
And you could say, oh, well, she doesn't have enough will or whatever. And that's why I can't think really, really, really hard, and all of a sudden there's a carton of chop suey right next to me. I don't know why I keep fantasizing about food just appearing in front of me.
But you do.
Yeah.
Yes.
Or a
Or you're
batch of gooey chocolate chip cookies that if I really, really thought about it and had my will towards it, that my water bottle would suddenly turn into a gooey chocolate chip cookie. It could. Just seems to me crazy thinking.
Yeah, and you wouldn't be able to get it through the little nozzle. So what's the
So,
point?
so when you said that is Scientology modern magic, it, I would say, well, is it magic that actually works though? Or is that
Is there any magic that actually works though?
depends on how you define magic. If you define magic to include sleight of hand,
No,
no.
no, that's
Then
we're not talking about a
yeah,
prestidigitateur, as the French
okay,
call them, or a
fair
conjurer.
enough.
We're talking about, and that's not an act of will;
Yeah,
it's an
that's
act of
not an act of
deception.
will. Yeah.
So
So
that's
I would say no, there isn't. The only real magic that I can see Scientology actually performing is turning millions of dollars into really ugly trophies.
well, they don't turn the millions of dollars; they give trophies to the ugly people that gave them the money. So we have to reword that a little bit. It's another discussion as to whether there are saints, angels, demons, spells, and that kind of thing. That's a discussion which we may, but probably won't, have at some point in the future. We just done a video where we talked about imagination and the use of imagination, and that our dear friend Christian Shurko's idea of internal reality control. So if you can control somebody's imagination, the way they image the world, the way they interpret the world, you've controlled the person. Religious systems do believe in magic. You can't have a religion that doesn't believe in magic, because it's fundamental that there are supernatural forces, magical forces in the world. So I was talking, a guy came and fixed my boiler the other week, and we've met a few times, lovely guy. And so he felt comfortable enough to tell me that as a Muslim, he believes in jinn. And he said, "Did I know what jinn are?" I said, "Yeah, genies like Aladdin and the lamp." And the idea that there are all of these invisible beings. Of course, this is fundamental to Christianity. You find the Dibuk in Judaism, you find the Gedon in the Tibetan world, where the Bodhisattva in Scientology, wherever you go, this idea of discarnate spirits. So people believe in this. In terms of, can I make things happen by willpower alone? Well, yeah, the people who Rhonda Byrne, who gave us The Secret, she had turned her will into hundreds of millions of dollars by selling this idea. And then 16 years later came back and said, no, I've realized the real thing now. So The Secret, the law of attraction, Christian Science, theosophy, anthroposophy, Christianity, Lord, won't you give me a Mercedes Benz? This idea of magic in the world and a supernatural world, the idea of an astral world, or a world, an etheric world, a world where our higher selves get together and party while we're down here slugging away below. The beliefs of Santeria and Voodoo, the West African magical forms in their origins. This is all, most people believe this. Indeed, in a survey that I don't know if you may have tracked it down once from me before, but it's somewhere around the end of the 1990s, there was a survey of atheists to see what they believed. And 80% of them, although they didn't believe in God, they believed in magic. They believed in supernatural events. So there aren't many people who don't, one way or another, believe in magic. But what we are speaking about specifically here is the power of the will. And we find Aleister Crowley. So what he is saying is that you can exert your will, your magical power over others. In Scientology, this becomes, and I think this is the most important doctrine of Scientology, and it's walked by, intention. That you will be able to hone your intention so that things will fall into place and happen as you want them to happen. This is expressed in Scientology with the expression tone 40. And as you know, but all of our viewers may not know, one of Hubbard's innovations was to take the humours of medicine, first derived by Galen, a Roman doctor in about 100 AD, where you have four different temperaments. The sanguine, which is the temperament of the blood, which is cheerful. The melancholic, which is the temperament of the bile. And in fact, the word means, melan means black, chola means bile. So you've got too much black bile, and so you're a little bit sad. Then you have the choleric, which is the person who's a bit like this. And that's chola, that's yellow bile. And I couldn't tell you which, whether it's the jejunum or the ileum that has the black or the yellow bile in, but apparently they do. And I'm not going to look. I don't want to know, frankly. It sounds horrible to me. And then the fourth temperament is the phlegmatic, which is phlegm or snot, as we call it. The word that's also used for phlegmatic is apathetic. And Hubbard arranges these things into a little scale, which he calls the tone scale. So you've got pretty much apathetic people, depressed people, grieving, as he puts it, angry people, and cheerful people. And he then adds in frightened and bored and interested in all of this. And this is where he started out. And as he went along and discovered that we'd all been around for 60 trillion, 73 trillion, or 76 trillion years, and the book History of Man, which took 2 weeks to write, starts with 60 trillion and ends with 76 trillion. New editions, thankfully, David Miscavige has violated the rule that you can't change anything Hubbard said and has just put 76 trillion all the way through, so it makes it. But as he ploughed his way into this, he decided that we're all dead in the head. That's the expression he used for it. That so we're all below death. So he took his tone scale, which had ended at death in 1950, and kept it going down, but he also kept it going up. And for a while, the top of the tone scale was tone 40, which is also called serenity of beingness. When you see a Scientologist doing tone 40, what you're actually looking at is somebody who is choleric. They shout. It's not a matter of silently emanating your will and getting people to do things. It's a matter of shouting at people until they do as they're told.
Yeah, I was about to say, I've in that wonderful TR demonstration that y'all did in Toronto, I believe tone 40, you said this is shouting, and it's
sit down on that chair. Thank you.
How serene are you when you're shouting?
Yeah, it's the other one is 8C, which 8 Hubbard had this total thing that he wouldn't use the infinity symbol. He used the number 8 instead. And I'd just like to point out they don't mean the same thing.
Oh.
They really don't. And they don't look the same, though it's looped. They aren't identical normally. But he, 8.80, 0.8, 8.8008, 3 books with 8s in them, meaning infinity. And 8C, therefore, the 8 actually means infinity, and the C means control, infinite control. And he was promising people, from 1952 onwards, he was promising people that he could sharpen their intention so that they could get whatever they wanted in the world. Now, I am the proof that this doesn't work, because if this did work, I wouldn't exist, because there are tens of thousands of Scientologists who definitely are willing me not to exist. And I've got to say, it has no effect whatsoever. So far, it's only been 41 years since I left. So, maybe they're just queued up and they'll get me. So this is the foundational idea of magic. I will be able to exert my will over others. I will have magical powers. I'll be able to make things do what I want. The next part of it, and the only other thing that Hubbard really promised, was that you'd be able to leave your body. And this is very much Crowley, as derived from Madame Blavatsky and her various sources, and many sources. It's said that she plagiarized more than 100 books to write The Secret Doctrine. It's also said by the scholar, Nicholas Goodrick Clark, who's a person I rely on for information, that she can't possibly have plagiarized these works because her English wasn't good enough. So one would like to point out that her companion in founding Theosophy, Henry Olcott, had perfectly good English, but we won't get into anything confusing there. There is this So the idea is that you want to achieve magical power. You want to be able to bully the world into doing what you want. Now, of course, if it is true that all 8 billion human beings and who knows how many possums and kangaroos have this power, then the conflict between us all is going to make it impossible for it to work. It's one of those things like karma, that once you've got more than half a dozen ants in the universe, karma just becomes mathematically impossible. That everybody is, so all 417 people that were on this plane got on, and it was their karmic moment for this to happen. That's an admission, and this is really important. That's an admission you have no free will whatsoever. Everything just happens to you because of what happened in the past. And I don't accept this idea. That seems to me a really silly and a way of giving away any responsibility for your own acts, of course. Oh, it was my karma.
The way my cult leader got around people's wills bouncing off of each other is he used a role-playing game model where you had dots in will. And that's why his will was more important because he had more dots in will than little old me.
I must say, to use my mother's term, he does sound a bit dotty.
But in any case,
Ooh,
his
that
will.
was a cynical little laugh there.
I'm sorry.
I'm not going to make any more jokes. That's much better. Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, that was so funny, Spike.
His 10 years, really. His will
may not be more than that, though, at this rate.
His will was more important because he had more dots in will. That is, he was more willful. So his will canceled out the will of all of us normal schmucks.
And so when you've got 8 billion people,
it's the important people like Elon Musk who have more will, and so they're the ones who, they're
$56 billion.
That's why
as a bonus for the man who sat on don't start me, sat on Joe Rogan's show, and Joe Rogan said, "You're the chief designer at SpaceX." He said, "Yes, I am." And then he explains what he's designed. Do you know what part of the rocket and the whole thing that Elon Musk, the chief designer at SpaceX, do you know what he did?
The cup holder?
No, it's the rocket's pointy.
Oh, for gosh
sake. He explains it. This was me. This was my contribution. It had a round end, and I thought it should be pointy. He's a brilliant man, though. We shouldn't put him down. He's going to make government cost nothing, virtually. It'll pay for itself by the time he's done. Yes, moving on extraordinarily swiftly.
Extraordinarily, yes.
Magic. How does magic work? Well, magic works by spells, doesn't we? We've all seen Harry Potter. I haven't. And we all know that it's spells. You have a little wand and you make wishes. Spells, postulates in Hubbard's term. And
you speak in fake Latin and all of a sudden you can unlock a door.
Or you use Arabic, abracadabra. A lot of this stuff has come out through the Sufis. Some of it's come from Kabbalah, which is kind of 11th century. It does not go back to the pyramids or what have you. All of these inventions, all of these wonderful tall tales that are told. But at the Disney level, we're told you make a spell, an incantation, and that's what makes it work. No. When you actually read what Abramelin the Mage or Eliphas Levi or Aleister Crowley or MacGregor Mathers or W.B. Yeats, I really have a problem with that. The fact that one of the greatest poets in all history was a lunatic who believed in, as a member of the Golden Dawn. What you actually do, and don't try this at home, okay? What you actually do is you enslave a discarnate being. You enslave a jinn, Dibuk, Gdon, Bodhisattva, and then you put your spell on them, and then you send them to the person you wish to influence. And that's how, I've given it away now, the big secret. And this is going to be a short video because Scientology is a rebranding of these magical ideas. It takes the idea of astral projection and it becomes exteriorization. It takes the idea of will, thelema, and it becomes intention. And you are being trained to become a magus. That's the idea. When you have achieved the final OT level, which was meant to be OT8, and he then said there are 15 levels above it, and David Miscavige hasn't managed to find any of them yet, despite a serious amount. He spent $11 million to have Pat Broker followed for 24 years because he was the only person who could possibly have these 15 levels. The first thing he did when he took over in 1987, I think it was, from Broker, was to have Broker's office raided and all of his filing cabinets seized, just in case these 15 levels that Hubbard had talked about in 1971 actually existed. They don't appear to. But the highest level, according to the Bridge to Total Freedom, as it was released, I think it was withdrawn in 1974 because of the fear of legal cases. It might be used in legal cases. I've used it in legal cases. It's in the book Scientology 0.8, which we've already mentioned, where 0 means the static and 8 means infinity. And we are told that at OT8 you will have control over physical and mental, matter, energy, space and time. You'll be at cause over mental and physical matter, energy, space and time. You'll be able to make universes appear and disappear, planets explode. In your case, strange foodstuffs appear. Well, no, casseroles aren't strange. Well, yeah, but the other one did sound a bit strange. What was that? Gloopy
No,
chocolate.
some chop suey.
No, the chop suey. There was one about filling your water bottle with.
Gooey chocolate chip cookies. I like them.
Oh,
Like them not so crisp. I like them kind of
gooey.
gooey, fresh out of the oven.
So we'll be doing a thing about health food diets later, and how to avoid them.
I've
And
been on a diet. Why do you think I'm craving chocolate chip cookies,
you've
John?
always, in the last 10 years, you've always craved chocolate chip cookies. What a ridiculous idea. So, so what we see is that if you reword magic, you get Scientology. And the interesting thing is, for me, if you look at these people, Eliphas Levi, Madame Blavatsky, Rudolf Steiner, who I really don't like very much, I must say, having looked into his bizarre life, they all put forward the idea that they have psychic powers.
Mm-hmm.
They can make events happen. And yet, none of them was able to evade death. None of them was able to evade aging. And in fact, Madame Blavatsky was only, I think, 60 when she died. And she didn't look very well. Aleister Crowley was a heroin addict by the time he died. L. Ron Hubbard was an alcoholic who was having, he had pancreatitis, I believe. And of course was taking a Vistaril that was found, a psychiatric drug, which was found in his system on autopsy. It's in the coroner's report. It's right there. L. Ron Hubbard took psychiatric drugs. Oh my God. So, you know, I said earlier, that he was not Maitreya. He was a very naughty boy. That where he claims in Hymn of Asia, I talked with John Sanborn, who's the guy who was Hubbard's publisher from 1954 to 78, editor and publisher. And he said to me, Ron brought me this in this poem in 1954. And he said, would you publish this? And I put it to one side. And he said, and eventually in about 1973, I realized I could change a word and it wouldn't offend me anymore. And so instead of it reading, the original reads, I am Maitreya. And he changed it to, am I Maitreya? And that's a good question because the answer is no. Because Maitreya is the Buddha who will lead all of us into nirvana, or nibbana if you prefer the Pali. You don't want the Kurt Cobain reference. He will take us all there. He's the last Buddha. So no, he wasn't. He was a very naughty boy indeed.
And
so
instead of enslaving discorporate beings. Instead, now Scientology enslaves the children of their wealthy donors and those in growing countries unfortunate enough to get drawn in by their anti-drug stuff.
Yes, absolutely. The interesting point about the discarnate spirits is this for me, and I've been saying this off and on over the years, but nobody's taken any notice because why would you? I don't know anything. When I did the operating thetan levels, and I did 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and there are only 8 of them. 6 is the course that trains you for 7, which is a continuation of 5, getting rid of body thetans, and 8's the one where you're told it's all been a waste of time and you've got to undo it. Oh, that's just saved you $150,000, me saying that. So if you'd like to, contribute some money to us, give us the $150,000 that you were just about to pay for OT8.
Yeah, the money.
But it interested me when I found out about magic and this use or supposed use of spirits. If I talked with John McMaster, who was the world's first real clear, and he said to me, why aren't we being friendly to the body thetans? Why aren't we helping them? We're just getting rid of them.
Or as Jerry Armstrong said, we should embrace our body thetans and have compassion for them and learn to love them.
Yeah. I mean, I must say that by the time I got to the end of it on OT5, I decided it was all nonsense. I decided I'd never had any body thetans. It was just an imaginary construction that had been given to me. And over the years, I did meet people who'd not been able to find body thetans, who'd been honest enough to say, I don't know what you're talking about. But I also met people who really believed they had supernatural powers as a consequence of doing this. And whenever I asked for a demonstration, I'm afraid I was given an excuse instead, which is, well, no, you don't want to freak people out by showing them their magical powers. It's like, you won't freak me out. Believe me, you won't freak me out. Just move this bit of tinfoil an inch. It's never happened yet.
Which Scientology magazine is it that maintains a column of success stories where most of them are, I wished for the light to turn green and it did. And
Yeah, I wish for the cloud to move in the sky and it did. I wish for gooey chocolate chip cookies in my water bottle and nothing happened.
Not in my water bottle, in place of my water bottle.
So where's your water bottle going?
Well, the mass that would have, I believe in conservation of mass. So the mass that my water bottle is would be replaced by the mass of my chocolate chip cookies.
So alchemic restoration of the plastics into chocolate.
This is a Stanley, dude. This is metal here. Oh, well, plastic top and reusable straw. And then, yes.
I'm still not convinced you can make chocolate out of any of those things. Meander reactively back to body thetans. Thought struck me, people when they do OT levels are getting rid of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of body thetans. And they're just saying, go away.
Where do they go?
Well, firstly, they don't exist.
No, but where do they think they go?
So there is no teaching that I'm aware of in Scientology about where they go, which is why I posed the question of if this were true and billions of these things are being released, because even just the OT3 incident, it's 176 planets each with billions of occupants. So they're all released. They can't get bodies, obviously, because there aren't enough to go around. Where will they go? Now, this is like a duckling imprinting on the first thing it sees. That where these body thetans are going to go, if they're coming from Scientologists, then who would their hero be?
L. Ron Hubbard.
So is it any wonder that he suffered dementia at the end of his life? When Virginia Downsborough rescued him from Gran Canaria at the end of 66, when he was researching OT3, she told me that he was terrified that the body thetans were going to take him over. We then find in Lawrence Wright's excellent Going Clear, and I'm not going to say the same thing about the documentary. I think the documentary Going Clear is awful, but the book is great. And he interviewed Serge Fouth, who was with Hubbard at the end. And right through to January the 24th, 1986, just in case anybody thinks I don't remember that, Spike. Cool, you'll never get past that, will you?
Never gonna
And
let me
Serge,
down.
no, nobody lives anything down, not allowed. Serge Fouth said that Hubbard was terrified that the body thetans were taking him over. And so that's why I'm saying don't try and do this at home, because if you do, the body thetans will take you over. It's the last and final part of this concoction, and I've probably already 3 times said the last and final part, is an idea that I've put forward frequently that most people absolutely can't think of. As L. Ron Hubbard said, when you become too incredible, you become invisible. And that's a very important point. And that's this. L. Ron Hubbard, on the 5th of May, 1980, wrote that his intention was to destroy Christianity, along with the Antichrist and Lucifer. He said he would be reborn as a political leader, and he would therefore stop the second coming of Christ, and, you know, we'd all be good. Now, if we say he starts his career with Jack Parsons in January 1946, trying to bring Armageddon, the war to end all wars, to bring the Antichrist to earth, to bring the beast, the Scarlet Woman, the Whore of Babylon, whichever label we want for these mysterious forces, the devil, Shatanai, Iblis, whatever you like. That if that was his intention, then what is Scientology? Now, there are 2 books called What is Scientology, and they don't actually explain it. Scientology is a magical working in the terms of magicians. The ceremony he performed with Parsons is called the Babylon working, because Aleister Crowley couldn't spell Babylon and put an A in it. Numerical significance. Oh yeah, that's the stuff.
Yeah.
So what he was trying to do through Scientology, I think, is twofold. One, he was trying to stop Christ from returning. And 2, when Marty Rathbun, somewhere around about 2013, when he was still blogging before he'd been paid off by Scientology, and they, threatened to have his adopted child taken away from him, which is what I think happened. But he put up this post saying, I think Hubbard wanted to be regarded as a god. And so I wrote to him and I said, in 1990, I published a book which actually explains how the Chinese and the Romans, it's in Blue Sky, had this thing, if my name continues to be said after I die, I continue to live. And there's a beautiful passage in the TV adaptation of I, Claudius, where Sian Phillips, the amazing Sian Phillips, as Livia, who has murdered her husband, the Emperor Augustus, by putting poison on his figs, realizes that the oracle has said that Claudius, as she has called him, will become emperor. And she begs him, make me a god. Make me a god. So Marty had worked out this was probably what was happening 23 years after I'd published it. And how appalling. There are people out there, I wrote the only history of this movement. Please, people, there isn't another one. There are, I counted 36 autobiographies of former members, which are very valuable. There are more than that. But the Aftermath Foundation had a list of 37. I'm going to take Robin Scott off that list because his is an explanation why Scientology is a great thing and everybody should be a philosopher king and follow him and do what he says, which I'm not going to do. But there are tens of autobiographies and you'll find a lot out about them. But if you want an overview of where Scientology came from, Hubbard's background and what it is, please go out and don't look at one of the stolen copies on the internet. They're not complete, they're retypes, they're missing a chapter. And this version has 60 passages that were missing from the original one because the court forced me to paraphrase them. and it has 40 bonus passages. These come from Hubbard's private correspondence and from his harassment orders. So I think, if you want to get your head around what Scientology was, it's a good idea to start there. And do get this edition, the one with the clouds on, because this is the new edition. The other one is actually a pirate copy being published by a US publisher, a quite sizable US publisher, who decided they could do it without a contract with me and pay me no royalties. So, this is, I have, no doubt, this is the most incredible story of the 20th century. L. Ron Hubbard and what he managed to achieve. There is nothing stranger. There's nothing more bizarre. And the contradictions, the amazing things that happened. So it's well worth looking at. And of course, I get $2 every time you buy a copy. So, and that's why I'm not very wealthy at all, really. I haven't got any money in the bank. I should be charging more. But there we go. So, any final thoughts on how magical gooey chocolate chip cookies or chop suey are?
I would say,
or casserole. That's the other one.
Back when I first met you, I was still quite messed up in my own personal beliefs and still loosely believed in some magical thinking. And yet I will still maintain that this is true, that it is a magical working in that he wished to make slaves and he got slaves. And even though now he's dead, those slaves are still, unfortunately, slaves. And whether it's the poor John Travolta who dare not leave, or those poor kids working horrible amount of time for no pay in horrible conditions, he's done what he set out to do.
Yeah, he said in 1952, we have ways here of making slaves. I was told off in a deposition by Kendrick Moxon for quoting that. And he said, but he then says, let's make sure none are made. And it's like, well, he didn't make sure none are made. He has, and that's the only reason that I'm doing this. I'm not actually making any money from, I haven't made a penny yet from these videos in 5 years, because there are still slaves, and our governments are so useless that they do nothing to stop this form of slavery. And there are all sorts of excuses about it being a religious order. But if you go and talk to people who are in monastic orders, they're not treated as slaves.
No.
And they get things like health insurance. That they're looked after in different ways.
And
this is
and dignity, and nobody yelling in their face unless they're in an abusive order.
Well, and they're, that I think there should be, knowing that, when I was down in East Grinstead, I moved here in 1994, but people were still very much being put on the rehabilitation project force. I think there are rules that government should assert. Unfortunately, it is true to say that there are monastic orders. For example, the New Kadampa tradition, which we've spoken about.
Yeah.
That do fail to treat their members properly. I have profound concerns about, we at the moment, the Archbishop of Canterbury resigned a few weeks ago because he had not stopped a child abuser. In fact, the guy went to Africa and ended up running a boys' camp when he was a known abuser. At the moment, the Archbishop of York, who's the second in command, is being asked to resign over a similar scandal. So there are aspects of religion and safeguarding that we need, that need to be part of law, and they need to apply to Scientology as well. Just saying, I'm here of my own free will is not enough when we understand how coercive control works, and that these people have been conditioned, and that's the word Hubbard used for it, brainwashed, that's the word Hubbard used for it, into subservience, into quite simply acting against their own best interests, and functioning as slaves. Yeah, the final point, and we will come back to this and keep talking about it. Scientology has slaves.
Yes.
We should, rather than attacking Scientologists, and I've been called an anti-Scientologist hundreds of times, but I'm not. I'm a pro-Scientologist. Everything I've done in the last 41 years has been with the intention of helping people who have been bamboozled into believing what is fundamentally nonsense, and then enslaved, psychologically and physically enslaved. I watched a bit of a video that Aaron and Jenna Miscavige did, and I was very touched. I read Jenna's book when it came out, very good book. I was very touched by her description of her childhood. You know, just not having a childhood, not being allowed to have a childhood, not getting an education, because from as soon as you can do something, you know, it's medieval society where you're not expected to have anything but the most basic arithmetic, be able to read so that you can read Hubbard, and then, you know, I when I left Scientology, I had a call from a friend up in Edinburgh, and he said, "Could my stepson come and stay with you overnight? Because he wants to leave." And this lad turned up on my doorstep. I still have his Sea Org cap, and he was 14 years old, and he was the supercargo, I think it was, which is the second in command over 180 people. And when I said to him, "Don't you think 14's a bit young to be doing this?" He said, "No, there are kids working here. 10-year-olds, 11-year-olds, 12-year-olds. He told me about 12-year-olds who were doing ethics handlings on people for their sexual behavior. It was just absolutely mad. But we'll talk forever. This is not about that. This is about this.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, Scientology is a rebranding, a rewording of magic, and its processes and procedures. Again, in the video I watched with Aaron, he said, as I've said many times, auditing is a kind of counselling. And I stopped saying that a few years ago because it isn't. It's a kind of hypnotism. And the direct comparisons are incredible when you start finding out how hypnotism works and that your imagination is being worked. But again, let's not, you know, let's get to an end somewhere before I tell everything I know about everything, which will take another 7 or 8 minutes. And we hope everybody's had a fantastic festive season, Hanukkah or whichever one it is.
Hanukkah actually starts at sundown on Christmas this year, according to my calendar.
Yeah, isn't that fantastic? Doesn't that prove that karma works?
No, it just proves that Hanukkah is a movable feast that goes on the lunar calendar rather than the solar.
Well, who'd have thought about Easter in those terms? You know, 'cause it's not just Jews who can have movable feasts.
No.
When we were in Istanbul, speaking of movable feasts, we were there during what in Istanbul they call Ramazan, but we're used to calling Ramadan. And you go into the square, which has the Hagia Sophia at one end and the Blue Mosque at the other. Just, and the Hippodrome runs down the side, you know, where the Roman emperors ran their horses, runs down the side there. And all of these people sat on the manicured lawns between these things with their little picnic hampers, all sat there waiting. And you kind of, coming from our culture, you kind of go, this is really weird. Nobody's eating. And then you go, oh, sun's got to go down first. So there you are.
Yeah.
There's our statement about Ramazan for everybody. Please, comments below, corrections of anything I said wrong, additions, anything that you want to add to this. Please don't call us names. We won't call you names in return. And, you know, there'll be a silly thing that I recorded years ago telling you, hi, this is John here. Please subscribe and give us some money. But some money would be useful because poor Spike can't afford a sufficient amount of casseroles, chop suey, and gooey chocolate chip cookies. And look, she's a poor starveling. Please, please. So they're my favorite.
Green beans, John. That's what I'm down to.
Oh, you poor thing.
I like
Poor
spinach.
thing. Yeah, well, you should have at least 30 plants a week in your diet. This is scientific reality. Anybody that says just eat grapefruit or avocado, you need all that chemistry to feed all the little bugs that then feed you, sacrifice themselves to feed you. Oh, they do. Bless you. Right. Thank you, everybody. And Happy New Year and all of that stuff. And thank you so much for your spending your time with us. Cheers. Bye. Hi, John here. Thanks for watching. We'd appreciate it very much if you would click like, as well as subscribe, and click the bell for notifications. Every dollar helps, and we welcome new patrons on Patreon, or you can make a one-off payment with any currency through PayPal. Thanks so much.